Welcome to Revive Ministries podcast. This month's theme is healing our communities, which dives into some of the questions like how can I help? We in Revive Ministries really focus on, mental health, substance use disorders, and other topics that I remember uh, being more involved in the church in the past usually gets shoved under the rug. A lot of times people get confused of the name Revive Ministries, though there's a lot of proselytizing elements to that name. Um, is more of context of my own self. I'm someone who, you know, has faith, uh, and but in regards to the function of this podcast, it's really about allowing you, the guest, people who want to share their story, to have a safe platform. Unfortunately, too many times it's not safe. Um, and it didn't matter what community we're in, as we speak about communities, um, whether it's a church, whether it's a work environment, sometimes, a lot of times, our voices are not heard. I think of Carl Jung. He describes loneliness as the inability to share what's important to you. So sometimes it's hard if you're older and you see someone who is struggling as maybe a teenager, and you will be like, well, that's not a big deal. But it's a big deal for them. And unfortunately, if we really want to connect, and that's part of the element of community, we sometimes, it's not so much just not be reactive, but even going beyond, like Nelson Mandela saying, be the last one to speak. Um, Moving forward with this topic, we had one episode, and this week I am going to be doing it as a segment, as offshoot of Robert's Corner. I wish I could have done more last month. It was a little bit rough for me, being open and honest. But we'll, um, but I had to take care of myself. So, um, talking about communities, whether you're a caretaker or one who's suffering, I have seen strong communities be very helpful towards healing. And on the other opposite side, I've seen it not be as helpful. Sometimes I think of a comedian, I think it's John Mulaney. I'm paraphrasing, but I jokingly, as I work in the field I'm in, or even talking to my friends and colleagues or myself, I try to remind, I just don't be a mayor of nothing. A lot of times we can be people pleasers. Sometimes we're kind of um, um, reluctant to admit it that we are. It is common. It's just recognizing it, and I just feel, especially those who are suffering, it can be extra heavy when the only way you feel that you have self-worth is to maybe over-explain and to please everyone's other needs. A lot of times, unfortunately, when I'm working with someone, or even when I'm thinking of my own experience, the priority is not on the individual who is suffering. The priority is on the families and the people who are affected, and I'm not minimizing that. However, it usually doesn't bode well moving forward. I just remember, I can only speak personally for myself. I spent countless hours trying to be understood, whether it's friends, people in my circles, my family, and I just felt that people didn't really understand. And it wasn't because they didn't try. It was not because they were rude or that they didn't support me. It just was something that I found little success in. And in turn, I felt more of a burden. I learned later, at least personally for me, I had to reframe and accept that I did not require others to understand to get the support I needed. Um, this is something I experienced and learned, not by someone telling me, but experiencing it. And part of it is not just experiencing it, but also finding some way to capture the fact that you are, you know, customarily, you're not defined by your illness or whatever, but more that I have self worth, that I'm worth the time it may take to heal. Healing communities provide a safe place and to gain this insight. So nothing is really perfect, but if I feel that I can grow or I have the ability to grow, but I'm not in a community that feels more, I can't say, likes it when I remain small, have blanket statements or ideals of what my future will be. Those communities don't really serve me well. Coretta Scott says it this way: the greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. You can have a lot of things that are very helpful for a community, but a lot of times we just people remember how they felt, you know. So today I will be sharing, like I said, a little bit of my insight because it's complex. You could give someone and you do a lot of good, but I also want to take it further because there's that human element, being both someone who experienced both sides of it, being someone who now is in the field to help people who struggle, and also being on the other side of the desk, the one who needed help. Disclaimer: if you are in crisis, please seek professional help immediately. Um, Even though things, whether it's my podcast or someone else who is sharing some insightful news, it doesn't, if you are in crisis, you are feeling about ending your life or any of those, get help. This, what I say may be helpful for an individual, but it's, when it is a crisis, when it is an emergency, I do encourage you to lean on those. Get the help you need. No matter whoever says anything, whether it's this podcast or another podcast or whatever you watch, if you're feeling that low, I do feel that no matter what anyone says, it goes back to self worth. You need to take care of you, and unfortunately, with mental health, it can be inconvenient. Just knowing something alone doesn't guarantee that symptoms, how you feel, will lighten. So I would encourage you to find that safe space. Talk to that colleague, talk to that friend, talk to that family member, and just say you need help. Moving the first part, I always do quotes or something to spark. And the first part, like I said last week in the episode with Clarissa Burt, is Angela Duckworth. This is enthusiasm is common, endurance is rare. Last month, like I said, it was, I just don't like rescheduling. But I also noticed, I said, well, I wasn't feeling well. So I didn't force it. I paused. I made a decision. And unfortunately, I didn't have many episodes. No. Part of it's my own desire to stay consistent, to put out content, to have people have an opportunity to voice. So, yeah, of course, I felt like I disappointed when I had to reschedule. Now, this is not the first time. However, I'm making light of this because I'm thinking about this quote and its relevance to this month's theme. The fact of the matter is, life happens, and sometimes enthusiasm fades. Enthusiasm fading is expected. I love what I do here, but I am not immune to my daily routines and things that can happen. So I do really think that this quote, going back to it, really speaks more volumes. And I guess I see it in different perspectives and angles now. Because there is something about endurance. It shows purpose. I might not feel so enthusiastic, and a lot of things, even that we love to do or are inspired to do, we may not feel this enthusiasm. So I wanted to record, um, despite even what I wanted. Um, but problem with enthusiasm is just like chewing gum. It's based on it can be short. It fades. So if you want to capture that same feeling, like when I first started podcasting, enjoy the conversations and just like this is, and I, to this day, it's a goal of mine to continue doing this indefinitely. Like whether as I continue growing, I feel it's not a burden. I was super enthusiastic to have guests, and I always appreciate anyone sharing and being able to come on. Um, I try to keep it simple, nothing extravagant, not trying to grow to be this juggernaut. I just wanted to capture a safe space, and normally I don't see that people can share um, what they've been through. And the wonderful thing about sharing, and it may not help another person listening or another person, but it may help one person. Or so I I just like, in a way, the podcast to build a community in itself. So um, but sometimes, like I said, enthusiasm fades. Priorities shift. Um, and I do feel that this quote from Angela Duckworth, I think levels and makes it a more healthy perspective of what may come. It doesn't mean that I don't have the passion or during these kind of times. It's just more that we're understanding and accepting that I am human, and sometimes priority shifts. And I thought, normally, I thought just sharing that to those who are listening, watching, it may be encouraging for you. So if you're someone who has something that you normally like to do, and then you get sick, just let's just say you had a cold, or something that persists for about a week, and it kind of ruined all your plans. The question is, are you not so much? And honestly, of course, the obvious is this is annoying. This ruined my plans. The second question is, are you worth the time that it takes to heal? And I think that has been a growing experience for me and allowed me to have a little bit more resilience and endurance. Um, and yeah, people may be listening. Oh, our schedule's not that big, but it's it's more about how you see yourselves, and I feel even the smallest things. They used to say, if you can manage some of these emotions, even at the smaller level, it helps when things get a little bit heavier. So, um, down here, I remember, asking mm, this question: do you feel endurance, despair, and enthusiasm common? I guess I was trying to say today, and then the answer is yes. I think, um, short. We're shorter with ourselves. Like, we may not be outwardly saying anything so damaging. I won't say I may not say I'm a piece of crap, but I may say I don't have time for this. I don't have time. I have to do this now. And granted, it's not directly being derogatory to myself, but it is indirectly saying I am not worth the time to get the healing that I need. One thing I've been reading, I read an article is a lot of injuries as you get older. If you're trying to be active, is due to the lack of time you give to recover. So, as you grow older, you maybe still be very active and competitive, but as you get older, you may need to put more emphasis to recover. Um, how does this relate to the communities we belong to? Um, you know, um, Off the top of my head, I would just say if we don't give ourselves time to heal, or better yet, don't take things seriously because we're just don't have the time. Understanding is, if it was another person, if parent, and just giving example illustration, the kid needs shoes, and it's not about financial, and I'm not talking about social economic level. The mom or parent or whoever's taking care of the kids, like, I have so many things to do. I don't have the time. That seems so cold and wrong for many of us. However, we say to ourselves all the time, we say, I don't have the time for this. Well, you're not feeling well. I don't have the time. I should be better at this. And unfortunately, even though it's a very individual thought, it prevents a lot of us from being open or being vulnerable to a community, even if we feel safe. Um, Moving forward, like a quote from John Green, and I've experienced this myself. There's hope even when your brain tells you there isn't. Um, I loosely use the concept of Occam's razor sometimes for myself. I could say, and this is a ridiculous notion, but let's say a neighbor that me and my wife were, they're a married couple, and we used to go. This is a made up scenario. Go for dinner for them. Like, we will either invite them over to our home. So we're pretty social. But then I get a text, and it seemed kind of sharp and cold. Now, this may seem ridiculous, but I'm trying to make it very kind of clear. I look at this text and I say to myself, and just not that I'm actually playing it out and saying, "Oh my God, this person hates me," but I look at this and like, um, I look at this like this person, this couple, doesn't appreciate. Maybe I invited them over, or they're short with something. I'm like, these people, and this may be a really extreme version, but we may have felt a smaller version of this. Like, this person hates us. This couple does not appreciate our time. This couple um, is just fill in the blank, whatever negative thought you have. Now, problem with that is I try to stop and like, hold on. I don't maybe not like the tone, and I use text because a lot of times it's hard to even inflect tone. I look at this text, I'm like, let's pause and let me think about this. How much evidence do I have that this couple does not like me, or me and my wife? Well, the evidence is really centered around this text. What else has it centered? Maybe I was going home and then I waved and then didn't wave back, or whatever. Okay. What evidence do I have that they do appreciate us or care about us or are good friends to us? Well, the countless times we hung out, countless times that they've been kind when we needed them. So if I weigh the both, the times I actually experienced, I can actually confirm. The text, the missing my gaze or when I waved, those are assumptions. So, I'm paraphrasing badly, but Occam's razor is the simplest solution, is usually the most correct. So if I have to make up more assumptions for whatever thought I had, most likely that is less on more likely that that's less accurate than the simpler solution that they do, like like to hang out with me and my wife, and that maybe the more accurate um, reason for what happened was just life. They could have been tired, they could have not seen, could have been short, whatever it is. And I know this scenario may be really um, exaggerated, and it is. It's meant to be, just so you can see the contrast. But how many times do we scroll on our phones? How many times do we wonder if we said the wrong thing? As you know, younger we are, maybe in our 20s or 30s, this may be part of your daily life. You go out and you just kind of question everything. So this is something that I feel helped with, I guess, combating John Green's quote. When I think also about and community, I also go back to this one quote. It's actually an African proverb. It says, "Focusing on the community we live in today, there is an African proverb I would like to discuss. It says, if you want to go alone, or if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." Um, as much as I can be stubborn, or a lot of us can be stubborn. Um, we do our best work. We experience life with more color, in regards, with more dynamics, with more not alone. Even if you're an introvert, because I tend to be feeling more on the side of being more introverted. Even all that, life is best shared, and I feel recognizing or being vulnerable to the fact that we need one another, even though we may not want to admit it. We want to be the hero that brings in all that, but at the end of the day, um, life is best lived shared, and that's granted. I'm not saying that um, you can enjoy your time alone. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that even if you are an introvert and you tend to prefer to be alone, there's something that at least a community, being around people, we are, especially during those times when we feel the world is overwhelming, it can be very helpful. So, but you could go pretty quickly alone, as this proverb suggests, but we could go further together. And I feel this is where communities can really shine. So, when I think about this African proverb, I think it gives a good example of that. I just want to give a few updates. Really, um, if you are someone who wants to share their story or be a part of this podcast as a guest, info at reviveministriesfl.com. You find that the email on the website, which is www.reviveministriesfl.com. But I'm always promoting if you want to share in that capacity. I do music Monday. It's been traditionally mostly me, but if you are a person who doesn't wants to be a part or just wants to share a song or um, contact us info at reviveministriesfl.com. I just like it is an experiment. I know a lot of us are not and so comfortable maybe speaking. I'm trying to give more platforms or modes of sharing. Um, but again, have any questions, concerns, or just have an idea, info at reviveministriesfl.com. Traditionally, we're going to continue with the podcast, and I will probably fill in, God willing, once a month to do a Robert's Corner like I'm doing today. It's always going to be on the theme of that month, but I'll just be sharing my insight. And beyond that, nothing else. We're excited, just being consistent, trying to make tweaks here and there. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the guests, and thank you for those who are listening. Um, yeah. Um, Beyond that, not much else. Moving on, I just want to say, going back to community, I think a lot of times, culturally, whether generationally or if you are from a different culture or lifestyle, defining words can be very can be the barriers or kind of help improve things. Defining words regarding our community, like it reads here, can help you understand each other better. Expectations and fears can be huge barriers to functional community settings. So I think a lot of times, family members that I know, different culture, I may be saying the same thing, but saying the wrong verb. It's important, at least what I find, is to listen and to be not quick to assume what you're hearing is what you're hearing. But that takes time. But in regards to, I do feel, and this is something I learned, I would say, a couple of years ago. Just a lot of times, if I feel stuck with someone in my community, a family member, a friend, I sometimes ask or try to define what words we're saying mean to each other. Are they the same? And it has promoted and helped, because this is something that can be a huge barrier if you feel that someone is being rude or not hearing you. And if you're a person that has usually not been heard a lot of times, or you're just struggling and you're just embarrassed to ask, this can be a huge barrier. So I do encourage finding a way. If you feel like you're running into walls, try to define what those words are. And I find, at least personally, it has helped. Um, uh, so, and it doesn't have, like I said, a lot of times it's not necessarily the culture being different that this is an issue. Is sometimes just the age. My parents' generation used different words to emphasize things differently, and I could be saying the exact same thing, and they not hear it because the words are not similar to what they're comfortable with. In what ways have you seen communities improve or not improve today? I think communities have, in some sense, there's more options. So I don't know if that's improved. But what I've seen also is, I see that we're talking about, there is an emphasis on it. I just do feel sometimes the excitement, the enthusiasm fades, and the derivative of the purpose of the community fades too, and that's sad to see. So I'm not saying this isn't true. I just think it's ongoing. What are the barriers that you see that causes issues in our community? Well, like I said, verbiage, generational kind of barriers when it comes to communicating effectively. Another thing is, um, um, expectations. Um, we want. I think we got accustomed to things happening quickly and having the one-stop shop option. But especially in my field, it doesn't work really that way. It's little steps. Um, and, there's no magic pill. Um, but, one thing I would say, especially with community in the mental health field, the person who is suffering needs to be involved. Like, in regards to communicating what is important, or more important, not just what's important, but direction where they would like to see success for their life be. So, in essence, family members will have a lot of opinions of what will be helpful for the individual, but if the individual doesn't feel part of it, most times there is that barrier that starts to build and build. The person doesn't feel appreciated, and like Carl Jung, the person doesn't feel what's important to them is important. Now, there's another aspect that maybe the family members may be closer to being right. That the person's what they feel is important is not that important, but you don't allow them the time to get there. And because of that, they don't feel they're allowed. There's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of urgency. And so I don't feel those barriers sometimes I do they do prop they do come up, and they can be hugely disruptive. The person at times can pull back. I can only speak from my experience that, and it's accountability on all ends, including myself. But when I was trying to share what was going on with me, and it wasn't working, stubbornly I said maybe the 100th time will work, but it doesn't work that way. So I had to think differently. I a lot of times kind of coined the phrase, mental health doesn't mean that you can't be successful or can't get quote unquote. It just means that you have to live life differently. I to this day have to do certain things that I know will help me. I feel the day that I say, oh, this shouldn't be a thing because I've come so far, I lose grip of what helped me. So am I allowed to remind myself to continue to be better, and things that don't serve me, and being able to let go of that. And these are things that are harder to do, but it's much harder when um, the emphasis of your getting better is externally driven. I do appreciate all the support when I was struggling, but the validation primarily had to happen internally. When I had to have validation from that I am worth, I guess, saving or getting better from external sources, I end up struggling and feeling such a burden when things don't work out. So, this is my perspective. Now, granted, everyone's experience is different. How much of an impact does this have on our ability to heal? I would say it can have a huge impact. I do feel, and I could be wrong, but I do feel that there is no real. I feel like being lazy, as much as that word is used so much, is conditioned. I do feel that people who feel that they have self worth um, can be motivated, but a lot of times they don't feel they can. They don't feel that their self worth, or their own self, or whatever they did, or whatever their struggles, that they're worth the time to get better. So a lot of times, um, I find that can be extremely disruptive, or even, and I only could say this because it was disruptive for me. I had to realize real quick that, but it wasn't real quick, but I had to realize that I can get support and not have people understand what I'm going through. Um, Over explaining, common. I can say that that's what I did. And a lot of the times, I could over explain to a lot of these different sectors. Like, Community can consist of like your work colleagues, religious friends, non-religious friends, whether you're religious or not, spouse, family, and whatever regional world you live in, or even online friends or people that you find or share interests with. Um, David Spangler says it this way: some people think that they are in a community, but they're only in proximity. The true community requires commitment, openness. It's a willingness to extend yourself and encounter and know the other. It is ongoing. So, despite I can only share from my perspective when it came to these questions, but I would also say whatever I say is not finite. It's just my experience and what I feel. But most accurately, it's ongoing. Like whether even if I achieve some insight and I'm able to navigate, I'm not going to claim to know how to best self care. Because, like, for me, my self care is ongoing. I'm learning constantly, I'm experiencing constantly. I think the biggest lesson I try to hold on to is that I have worth. Like, but I want to also say that the amount of appreciation or recognition I want to receive, I need to equally receive the amount of accountability. So I think there's a state of homeostasis or balance when I'm able to do that effectively. If I want all the praises but never the criticisms for the things I've may have not done as well, um, it can build bad habits and character. And I just say that from experience. We are human. We can make mistakes. And I think that's not what makes a community strong. It's not a community that doesn't make mistakes. A community that's willing to work together or get the help when they do. And I think David Spangler says it best, and in that regard. And Millard Fuller says it this as we come up to as we wrap things up here. For a community to be whole and healthy, it must be based on people's love, concern for each other. So I would say, at least maybe I feel confident that I could tell if someone's help me, like, or if it's just, oh, this is just a task. Oh, I just need to do this to, you know, you know. But when it comes to doing it because you're actually concerned, you just take the extra effort. Person needs help going um a mile, you go 2 miles. Now, granted, these are just attributes. If a person needs help, you don't focus on the inconvenience because helping others is inherently inconvenient, even though your heart to heart wants to help. So, um, if you're someone who wants to help when it is convenient and is very much visible, that it, the person receiving it is not going to feel, at least you can't hide that. If the emphasis is showing your how good you've been while the person's still struggling, even though you were nice enough to give some tangible income, tangible support. I mean, it's going back to people remember how they felt. I could give a person, let's say, a very much helpful support tangibly. Let's say in this um, illustration. However, the way I carried myself and how I shared that, and how the person may have felt hurt. So, going even further, let's say I give a tangible support to someone, and the person wanted to say thank you and just wanted to share why this was so important to that individual. If I don't allow that person to say that, I just give them the money, or I'm not, or that support. Now every scenario is different. The person's still gonna feel like unheard. He's gonna appreciate, he or she's gonna appreciate, but a lot of us, when it comes to community, we want to feel heard. So tangible is helpful. All this stuff is helpful, but it, when it comes to wholeness in regards to community, at least from my experience, it's not just delivering what you feel another person needs. It's just how you carry yourself while you do it. Final thoughts is be kinder to yourself. If you are someone who, um, you know, has a setback, and granted, everyone's story, everyone who has experience can, um, what I'm trying to say, and I'm not minimizing it. I know for me, I could say that at the thick of it, I felt that my situation was the worst, but it wasn't. But it was to me. So logically, I know there's other people who struggle and experience things worse. However, it's when I even the smallest step to feel like, okay, I want to do this to see if this improves, not just doing the same thing and expecting it to change, because even though it feels or appears obvious to not be working. So those times when I'm trying to explain to my family or friends, this is what's happening, and expecting that the 101st time they're gonna kind of understand and respond or kind of share what, or even have the like, or have the response that I expected to. Then when I checked that box off, then I could get support. It wasn't serving me. And it sounds silly to say, it just with mental health, this is where people who haven't had any well, I won't say real, but haven't had significant disruption with mental health issues, um, it'd be obvious, like, no, I won't do this. But someone who has, there's almost that you are in this debt, like in the credit card. You're almost like, I need to justify being here. I need to justify because I'm such a burden. I need to explain to them why I'm so XYZ. The family members or the friends may not even know, and they're trying their best to, to express what they're hearing. But at the end of the day, at least from my experience, it didn't help. The idea was not a bad one. However, um, going beyond mental health, no one's going to understand anything that a person's really experienced from their perspective and their context. I think part of it was the stigma about mental health that made that feeling so much stronger. So that's my final thought. Find kindness. If you are struggling, obviously, um, give yourself the level of kindness to heal. So the expectation, I need to get better. Be kinder to yourself. So a lot of times it's the opposite. It's not so much I want accolades to or be appreciated. And sometimes, as I say, sometimes accountability is so high, almost disproportional to what is really maybe happening. So I have mental health. Let's say person has a mental health issue, and they're never really thinking about the things that they do or they try to do despite it. So they're constantly in this state where there is imbalance, that they don't feel they deserve any accolades at all, even though they may have done some really good things, because there's a disproportional expectation that they have to, be accountable for a lot of things that are not outside of their control. And I'm not saying every case is be different, but that level of imbalance, at least from my experience, made it very difficult to see very clearly that I was doing something that wasn't serving me. It's not that um, sharing and being open. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying requiring myself to over-explain to then, if the person understands, feel worthy enough to get the help that I needed. So complex, my perspective from my experience, but I do appreciate everyone listening. I appreciate all my guests. Remember to stay updated with Revive Ministry through the various platforms. ReviveMinistryFL.com is our website. This is goodbye from Revive Ministries, with leaving you with this Native American proverb. It says, "With all things and in all things, we are relatives."